Good morning, everyone. I'm Jay Restuccia. Welcome to Keystroke Live. Glad to see some of you could join us this morning. Keystroke Live is, of course, held every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. You can use the same login information, and we're going to continue to present topical keystroke technical training. Every month, we do Keystroke Live is hosted by SPS President Michael Gebb on the first Thursday of each month. Today, we're just going to jump right in with the Summarize History function. This is a function of the Keystroke Database Manager, and it does exactly as its name implies. It presents us a summary of the history of various databases, of the inventory, items, of customers, of clerks and vendors, etc. So it gives us sales and purchase summaries and at intervals. It'll give us a weekly summary, a daily summary, monthly, etc., or all three. We can have users run this at regular intervals manually from within Keystroke, but we can also automate the process using an external Keystroke utility called summary.exe. I'm going to jump right into Keystroke here and introduce the Summarize History function. This is a utility that's been in Keystroke for many years. It's we've got loads of users that do use this function. Many more aren't even aware it exists, and it's really a handy utility for just getting a quick glimpse at some totals for, again, your customers, your inventory items, your clerks, for that matter, any database record virtually. We're going to jump right into to Keystroke. Today I'm using some sample data, the tutor data that we include with the software. So it is limited data, but it's certainly sufficient to demonstrate our purposes today. Let's go ahead and jump into our database manager. I'm going to start with our inventory database. A lot of users, or many of you folks, may be familiar with this function and may not even know it as the Summarize History function. Summarize History is when we select an inventory record, either highlight it on the list or actually retrieve the inventory record on screen, pull the record up. It's when we use the Control F5 key combination. All right, this will invoke the Summarize History function, and as you see, I only get a brief flicker here. I also get a ding. It's telling me that there is no summary data available. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and generate some summary data. This is always done in the database manager, when run manually, that is. In the database manager, we're going to go to our special menu. We're going to go to the Summarize History function. So again, here's a function that's been sitting under the special menu for many versions of Keystroke, and many users may never even touch this function. We go to Summarize History, and we'll see our configuration for the Summarize function. Period is referring to which what intervals we want to see that at, whether we want to see monthly summaries for our database items, or weekly summaries, or daily. For our purposes today, we'll use all. And database is fairly self-explanatory. We see the databases that we can run the Summarize History for inventory, customers, vendors, or clerks. Again, for our purposes, it's going to be all. Move old is a function that's going to let us remove summary history after or prior to a certain date. It's really not relevant for our purposes here today. We do allow a start date and an end date. End date, again, almost always the user is going to want to leave at the current date, get everything, all of the summary history up till now. The start date for this first run, I'm going to leave it at blank, and Keystroke handles that in a very specific fashion when we do not specify a start date. It uses predetermined periods here. When we set it to all periods and we do not specify a start date, Keystroke is designed, or the summarize history function is designed so that we get the past 7 days, the past 5 weeks, and the past 12 months summarized. So just to zip through here, just to run it for the first time, it gives us the command that's going to be used, and I think an important detail here is that we see the actual command to be run. This is the same sort of command that would be run as a scheduled task or through a batch file. I'm going to proceed. Of course, Keystroke is going to open and begin zipping through files, and that's happening in another window that I can't switch rapidly to. Let's see. Okay, so here we're now in the summarize history function. It looks as though Keystroke is just buzzing through files here, and of course we got a confirmation that it was complete for that range. So we're back in Keystroke now. Now, again, Control F5 when you're on a database record list or on a record itself. Control F5 invokes the summary function. So here we get some summary function, and again, this is very limited data, so we're not seeing much, but it'll serve as an example here. I'm going to scroll all the way down to our into the monthly period, and we see, as I mentioned, Keystroke had summarized the history for our inventory items for the past 12 months. We get the monthly totals for the past 12 months. This is basically a reverse calculation that Keystroke has done, or a calculation after the fact, I guess I should say. Keystroke has compared all sales and purchases of inventory items and used that information to generate this summary. Okay, so it's not done real time. It is a calculation that is done based on sales and purchases that have been entered and variances. So here we can see in our example here, back in December, this item had a quantity purchased, and it gives the purchase amount, or the purchase cost, that is. We see the sales of the item as well. As I scroll up, I get to the weekly period, and again, in this sample data, this particular item did not have any activity in the past 5 weeks. Right. As I get to the daily data, the daily summary, again, the summarize history function, without actually having specified a start date. This is a really important detail. Without actually having specified a start date, Keystroke uses predetermined periods. Again, it's the past 7 days, past 5 weeks, past 12 months that the summarize function will run for. Now, we could set that summarize history function to run for the past 2 years. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to give us 2 years of monthly summaries, weekly summaries, and even daily summaries. Now, a daily summary, that's going to take an awful lot of work. Do you really need to see in this, just in this preview, this glance at the activity of your database records, do we really need to see every day's summary? So that's a real important consideration, is that when we run this, under most circumstances, you don't necessarily need to run this for all periods. More commonly, users that run this function, they usually do only want to see a weekly or monthly, but they certainly don't need the past year's worth of daily summaries. This just creates a tremendous list that they have to scroll through, that they have to navigate through. So often a user is going to just change these periods, all right, and run for individual periods. In this case, let's just rerun this summary for weekly totals. And I want to do the past years, so I want a year's worth of weekly summaries. I'll use a relative start date of -1y. Again, that works virtually throughout the program. A relative date of -1y to represent 1 year, -1m to represent a month, -4d to represent 4 days prior. This is widely used when we're running functions such as this through a scheduled task or through a batch file. We'd use a relative date. So I'll go ahead and launch this again. And again, I'm just doing a weekly summary for all databases for the past year. Says OK. It's going to launch a new function. All right, so again, we can see it really zipping through files here. And what it's doing here is this is creating the summary files. All of the summary details are held in specific data files. They reside in your data directory in a subdirectory named summary. And we see corresponding files or files that correspond both to the database, the date, and the period, whether it's weekly, etc. So I go right back in to my database manager, still on the same record again, Control F5. I've run this now, and now we can see a much greater list of weekly summary data for this item. Let's see if we've got a few more items with higher volumes of sales. Let's see, Control F5. So again, it's run for every single inventory item when we run it for the inventory database. Whichever databases we include, every record gets summarized. So again, we see a much larger list of weekly summaries, weekly transaction history for this for each item. So again, it's just an easy means for your users to get a quick glimpse of recent history for database records, be it your inventory database, your customer database. Let's go ahead, jump over to the sales manager real quick. This morning I've entered a new transaction in this sample data. We see it's for a few items on this transaction. It's for customer number 18. Let's go ahead and review this customer. So again, not just inventory, customers, vendors, clerks. Here we see the weekly activity for customer number 18. We see we've done the past 7 days daily, so we see their past 7 days history. We see their weekly history now for the past year. So real easy to just get a quick glimpse at some data for the customer. All right, again, we've got clerk databases as well. Can review a clerk summary. Control F5 on any lookup list or on a lookup list or an actual record. See our daily summary for this clerk, weekly, and of course monthly as well. So again, just nothing more than a handy little feature to get a quick view of history for your inventory, for your customers, for your vendors, and for your clerks. Again, I had mentioned that this is a a manual function. This is not updated on the fly, so to speak. So users do have to either run this function manually at their preference from the database manager, or to take it a little more hands-off, we can run it from as a scheduled task or from a batch file. Let's just go right back to where I ran this last. Again, as soon as I confirm my summarize history parameters, I get a confirmation screen that the following command will be run. Summary. That is the executable that's used. So we can create a batch file or create a scheduled task that runs summary.exe. Okay, summary.exe. We're confirming the data directory that's being used with the standard /d switch, and in this example we're only specifying an end date, which of course will use the default periods or intervals for the summarize function of 7 days, previous 7 days, previous 5 weeks, previous 12 months. But of course, in our batch file, we could just as easily include a start date equals, let's say, -1y. We can include period equals. In fact, we do include a doc file here. I'll find that for you. So within the Keystroke doc directory, you will find summary.doc. And this, of course, is going to give you the all of the command line switches, all of the variables to be used when summary is done. And again, it's the same. It's a command line equivalent of the same parameters that we use from within the database manager. We can use the /d to specify our data directory, /move old, and move old, again, it removes older history. Maybe you don't want that list to grow to the past 5 years. When we apply move old, it moves everything prior to the start date, prior to the default intervals before the start date. So if we were to run it for January 1st of this year, it'd keep the previous 5 daily summaries, 7 or 5 weekly summaries, 7 daily summaries, 12 monthly summaries. Period. Again, we can specify that on our command line. Database, specify that on the command line. Start, end, very self-explanatory. We can put it in a Windows scheduled task. Let's say have it run once a month, once a week for argument's sake. The user won't even have to see it, won't have to be present, won't have to have any user intervention at all, and that summary history gets generated in the background for them. And again, to get for the full details and the full document in your Keystroke doc directory, you'll find summary.doc, and it gives all command line instructions for summary.exe. So, that actually took up a little more than I was planning for just a very basic function here. I'd be happy to answer any questions or provide any further details for anything that we've discussed today. It looks like everyone is muted. I'm going to go ahead and unmute the meeting here. Is there anything that I could clarify for anyone? Is this a feature that any of you have not been familiar with, or have any other input on the summarize history function? Well, I hope I'm still coming through to folks. Anybody, I'll take that silence to mean that everyone understood perfectly, and no one has any questions about summarized history.
Where does it show transfers?
I'm hearing somebody. Could you... Transfers are not shown. Actually, I do believe the transfers will be shown under the miscellaneous column. And that would be why it's not marked. Let me pull that up here. Let me pull up an inventory item. So, simply going on memory, and I'll have to double check just to be 100% certain, but again, all we get here is just a glimpse of some details. We see the quantity on hand, which is of course our current quantity on hand, the quantity sold for that period, sales, dollar amount, quantity purchase amount. Then we have our miscellaneous column. That miscellaneous column will include any variances, and I'm reasonably certain, I have to do just a quick check there in some multi-store data to verify that miscellaneous does include transfers. I'm reasonably certain that's why it's not named variance, why the heading is not variance, because it also includes the transferred quantities. And of course, obviously, we have very detailed transfer reports within the store link, which is going to be, a more thorough means of showing, what's been transferred. Did anybody else have any questions for us today? All right. Well, I do thank you all for joining us this morning. Next week we will return to Keystroke Live, where next week's session will be hosted by Dana Bargell, discussing why to choose Keystroke Advanced POS. Again, everyone, thanks for coming. If anyone does have further questions, please feel free to contact us at our support line, 800-275-4727. Thanks, and everybody have a great day.